Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Mac Shoots Film. Okay, today we're going to solve a battle that's been raging in my camera bag for a couple years. What is my EDC, everyday carry, everyday camera? I've had an FE2 and an FM2 lingering around in my collection for quite some time. And while photography is not all about kit, you definitely should eventually settle on one platform so you can become intimately familiar with all the intricacies of that platform to help you better perform out in the field. Like understand, hey, this meter underexposes by X stops, right? Just knowing your kit by shooting it enough and having that familiarity can absolutely help you be a better photographer. Instead of hopping from camera body to camera body to camera body, stick with one. So the purpose of this video is to determine, are either of these a viable everyday camera that I can settle on? For a while I was shooting Leica. I still have a Leica M6 with a 50 f1.4 Summilux. You'd be like, Mac, why aren't you shooting that? There's multiple reasons, but ultimately I don't want to carry around kit that expensive when the performance isn't that much greater than what I can get out of these two camera bodies and lenses that I have, right? Be practical. And let's be honest, I travel a lot. If someone were to rob me, break in my car and steal it, or I leave it behind, I leave stuff behind all the time. I would hate to leave behind $8,000, $10,000 worth of kit, and I can just leave behind $300 worth of kit. So let's do this. Let's head to Branson, Missouri, which is an absolute film photographer's playground. You have to check it out. And we'll shoot both of these cameras in a real scenario, like how I normally shoot my photos, walking around, randomly snapping shots. And I'm gonna try to get a feel for what seems the most natural and stays out of the way and allows me to compose that shot quickly and easily.
User experience when it comes to a camera is as important in the photographic creative process as the lens, the film, and even the light. If the tool you're using is cumbersome or unintuitive, your creative juices don't flow as readily, motivation to create decreases, and your overall output is impacted. Since jumping back into film photography, I've been searching for the camera that I can settle into for the next few years and grow extremely familiar with. My list for my everyday camera, my everyday carry, it's short but it's firm. 1. It needs to be a Nikon SLR. I have a ton of f-mount glass and I'm not looking to invest in a new ecosystem. 2. It needs to have a minimum of 1/4000th shutter speed. I shoot the full range of photographic subjects and I need to be able to shoot f1.4 with 400 ISO film in daylight, and I want to be able to do that without carrying a bunch of extra kit like ND filters just to get the shot. 3. Ideally, I can get a good copy of this camera body for less than $300. I like to shoot 2 different prime lenses on 2 different bodies, ideally with 2 different film stocks. So I need to be able to buy 2 of these cameras, so the price per body must be reasonable. 4. It must have a metal or alloy body. No modern plastic fantastic for me. 5. It must have minimal electronics. Less to fail. A nice to have is aperture priority with exposure lock. Sometimes I don't want to manually control every aspect of the shot, and with aperture priority and exposure lock, you can do just that. So after a few weeks of research, I narrowed it down to 2 cameras, and those are the Nikon FM2, 1/4000th of a second, mechanical shutter, minimal electronics, and the Nikon FE2, 1/4000th of a second shutter, some electronics, but it has a nice to have with the aperture priority.
while the sun is just breaking the horizon. It's gonna hit this mirrored octopus at the aquarium here in Branson. So amazing. With the FM2, the metering system, the display is a minus, a 0, and a plus. With the FE2, it's more of a matchstick needle, which is way more precise. So I really prefer that. But let's be honest, it's just film shots in the morning. We're gonna expose them pretty close either way. The adventure continues. Let's hit the next spot. So remember, the point of this is not really to compare the photos. Why I'm shooting both cameras is to like compare the experience of shooting with it. And I'm telling you right now, the FE2 right now is so much more enjoyable to shoot. The meter readout is the big difference for me so far. Let's keep shooting. Okay, so obviously the shoot is done. We're back in my hometown and let's talk about it. So it's glaringly obvious to me during the shoot that I enjoyed one much more than the other. Let's talk about 3 key points that I think are super important to discuss that will really lead me one way or the other. First of all, on the FE2, it has aperture priority and exposure lock. That's really important for quick, easy photographs. I know some photographers would be like, aperture priority, you're not a real photographer, whatever. Shooting a film camera all the time, everything's manual. With the FM2, manual focus, manually set that exposure. It's just, sometimes you want to break from that and just let the camera do a little bit, right? You'll tell it what to do. With the FE2, I'm able to point at my subject, get my focus, and then in aperture priority, just simply push the exposure lock towards the lens and then recompose. And you can do that really fast. Focus, lock, recompose. Or focus on what I want the exposure to be set for, lock it, and then bring it back to my subject. Super fast. With the FM2, it's like point at what I want my exposure at, set my exposure, then go and then focus, right? So it doesn't sound like a big difference, but it's so intuitive with aperture priority and exposure lock. Just bam, bam, shoot. This one, you're cranking a dial, okay, I got it, and then recomposing. So that's the first one. The second one that is way more important than I thought it was gonna be, in the FE2 with the meter, it is a matchstick needle readout. And as you point at subjects, the needle is constantly moving to let you know what the exposure is for that scene. And if you want to, evaluate the shadows, the mids, and the highs, and then do an average to determine what you should set your exposure to, that's so quick and easy with the FE2. Point to the shadows, 1/60th, point to the mids, 1/25, point to the highlights, 1/250th, and be like, okay, I'm gonna set it at 1/25, and then fire your shot. And it's just really interesting to be able to have all that data. You can't make an informed decision without information. The FE2 gives you that. The FM2, if I wanted to do the same thing, first of all, it's very rudimentary. It's a +0- meter readout, no numbers in there. And then I would have to point at the shadows, set the shutter speed, okay, 1/60th. Point to the mids, set the shutter speed, okay, 1/25. And you get it. So it's a lot of turning the dial and then doing the math. It's not quick and it's not informative. And that was really surprising to me that I cared so much about that, but I really enjoyed having that information. Third point, this is probably the biggest thing for me. Both of these have 1/4000th of a shutter speed, but with the FM2, it's mechanical. I was in the trip of a lifetime going through California Trona Pinnacles, then I went to Death Valley, and this was during the pandemic, so no stores were open, and my battery went dead. Thankfully, I have my Leica M6, and I was able to use my iPhone for metering. My backup batteries were dead. So battery went dead in my camera, backup batteries were dead. No way to buy more batteries in Death Valley during pandemic, nothing's open. That mechanical shutter saved me. If I would have had 2 FE2s on that trip would have been done. All the time off work and money invested in that trip, gone. So it's pretty scary to be completely reliant on a battery to be able to take a photo. With the FE2, you can take, with no battery, a photo at 1/250th of a second, and that's it. So you better expose your aperture around that. With the FM2, it's, hey, you can still fire away, just use your iPhone or a handheld meter. Okay, so it's a lot of talking. What is my decision for which one of these should and could be my everyday camera, everyday carry? I guess it all depends, and I know that's the worst answer for someone coming here looking for a decision on which one they should buy. If you're just going out for a walk and you want to have light kit, one camera, one lens, and the film in there, you probably want to take the FM2. What if your battery goes dead on that walk and you see something beautiful? Sure, you can run back and go get it, but just a peace of mind knowing that you have everything you need right there to take a photo always. But we live in modern times, it's 2024. Stores are usually open other than the pandemic, or if you're not far from civilization. And if you have 2 FE2s, one goes down, you can just pull the battery out of the other one or just pick up the other one and shoot. So I would say, if having peace of mind that you can always take the photo, is probably gonna be the FM2. If you're willing to have 2 camera bodies and a bevy of batteries, probably go with the FE2. Or even better, which contradicts what I said about having one platform to settle on it to get better, maybe shoot with the FE2 as your primary and have a mechanical shutter in your bag as a backup. Not ideal, but really get familiar with the FE2, but you always have a fail-safe with the FM2. But for me, I think the search probably continues. There has to be a camera out there, 1/4000th of a second mechanical shutter speed, aperture priority, matchstick needle metering. Nikon body. And I think you guys know what that camera is. It is a little more expensive, but I just so happen to have one back from repair, and we'll make another video on that soon. But I would say to close this out, it's all situational. FM2 is gonna be the most dependent in the craziest situations, but an FE2 with a backup, you should be just fine. Thank you so much for making it here to the end. If you're still here, please give it a thumbs up. In the comments below, tell me your thoughts on it. This is completely subjective. This is not like the most decisive channel on film photography. This is just some random dude with a camera talking to it. So I'd really love your feedback in the comments. Let's talk about it. Also, please consider following me on Instagram, RealMacShootsFilm, and check out my website. That's also realmacshootsfilm.com. Okay guys, see you next episode.